Welcome to the meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission for May 19th, 2022. The time is 4:30. I'm Margot Schaub, and I serve as the Library Commission Affairs Analyst. This meeting is being held in hybrid format, with the meeting occurring in person in the main Library Correct Auditorium and available to view or listen to on WebEx. Public comment will be taken both in person and remotely by video or call-in for each item on the agenda. We will conduct public comment with attendees in the CRET first and then move to WebEx for public comment. Each comment is limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise noted. Members of the public can observe the meeting using the WebEx system by following the link in the library's event calendar or by calling 1-415-655-0001 and entering the access code 249304033419. Attendees wishing to offer public comment virtually should raise their hand when public comment for that item is called. To make public comment when connected by phone, please raise your hand by dialing *3 to be added to the remote queue for the agenda item you intend to comment on. Individuals joining by WebEx should click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the participant panel to be added to the queue. Bill Kolb from Media Service Operations will facilitate this meeting and assist in moderating WebEx virtual public comment. Mr. Kolb will call upon WebEx attendees by name or by caller number to prompt each attendee who wishes to provide public comment. If we experience any technical issues with WebEx, we will recess and try to address the issue. Please try logging back into WebEx if there are technical problems. Library commissioners in attendance are President Connie Wolf, Vice President Pete Wong, Commissioners Ono, Mall, Wardell, Dudesy, Lopez, and Bolander.
Thank you very much. Hello and welcome to the May 19th, 2022 meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission. We are delighted to be here. This is the first time all commissioners have been together in 2 years, so welcome everybody. Delighted to have this meeting. To those of you here with us in Correct Auditorium, we're delighted to have you here. And we're also thrilled to have our virtual audience out there somewhere out there listening to us and watching us, so thank you for joining us. We have a very full and exciting agenda ahead of us, but let's first start with reading our Ramaytush Ohlone land acknowledgement. The San Francisco Public Library Commission acknowledges that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We recognize that the Ramaytush Ohlone understand the interconnectedness of all things and have maintained harmony with nature for millennia. We honor the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples for their enduring commitment to Warrep, Mother Earth. As the indigenous protectors of this land, and in accordance with their tradition, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. As uninvited guests, we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community. We recognize to respectfully honor Ramaytush peoples, we must embrace and collaborate meaningfully to record indigenous knowledge in how we care for San Francisco and all of its people. I just want to thank the IT team in advance for your help in facilitating and allowing this hybrid meeting to occur. If you have not already done so, all materials for this meeting are available at the back of the room here in Correct and can be downloaded on the San Francisco Public Library Commission website, sfpl.org. We have a total of 6 agenda items today, and we're going to begin with item number 1, a discussion and possible action on a resolution to adopt findings to allow teleconference meetings under California Government Code Section 54953E. To hold a meeting remotely, policy bodies must adopt findings consistent with the requirements of recently enacted state legislation every 30 days. Before us for consideration is a draft resolution adopting the findings necessary to hold this meeting remotely or in hybrid format as we are doing today. We will open public comment before our commission discussion on this item. We remind members of the public that their comments need to address this item agenda only. There will be an opportunity to address general comments in agenda item number 2. Members of the public who wish to make public comment on WebEx, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. If you've called into the WebEx dial-in number, please press *3 to line up to speak. Operations, can you give us a sense of how many people have joined us on WebEx today?
Madam President, at this time, there are 5 remote attendees.
We will begin with public comment from members of the public present here in the Corrett Auditorium, and then take public comment from members of the public observing or listening via WebEx. Public comment is now open here in the Corrett Auditorium.
Good evening, members of the Library Commission. It's nice to see most of your faces. I see one mask, and I guess we've been told it's up to us as a health matter whether we want to wear a mask or not. I unfortunately don't see in the back a copy of the item in question. So let me ask you, are we talking about Ramatouche, or are we talking about the decision to go with a hybrid meeting?
This is, we're on item number 1, which is discussion and possible action on the resolution under California Government Code Section 54953E.
Thank you. As I said last time, the wording of that resolution, first of all, suggests that you've already had a discussion about current situation, about current medical advice, about all that relates to whether you need to have a remote meeting. It also has an option that I said was very troubling, and that is it says that if basically any or all of you are in a situation where you don't presumably have the ability safely to be here in person, that the Library Commission could have its entire meeting remotely. And I expressed concern as to the timing of notifications, because if you're doing your meeting 100% remotely, where does that leave the folks who have read the agenda and think that it's happening at least in part here in person? I think that's a very dangerous thing to leave in the wording as an open possibility. I think you need to include in the wording that you're going to give proper notice to the public should there be a 100% remote meeting, or at least have the ability of the public to participate, as you've promised in the agenda, to participate in person as the agenda says. There should be no question in the mind of the public as to where and whether they're going to be able to come here for a partially or fully in-person meeting, or whether, lo and behold, they might show up and there's nobody here and no access to the public. I see I have 23 minutes. I don't know what's flashing before me. It's going very fast. Maybe it's hundredths of a minute. I think you need to make that very clear as to what your intention is with regard to fully remote meetings and how the public then would have access as it's supposed to have. Thank you.
Is there any further public comment from attendees here in the Corrett Auditorium? Seeing there is no additional public comment here in Corrett, we will turn to public comment through WebEx. The San Francisco Public Library Operations team will moderate this virtual public comment. And just a reminder, if you are using the WebEx interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. If you've used the WebEx dial-in number, please press *3 to line up to speak. Operations, if there are any commenters in the remote queue, please begin to put the commenters through.
Madam President, at this time, there are no commenters in the remote queue. I'll pause momentarily to allow commenters to join the queue. Madam President, there are no remote commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. Hearing no further requests for comment, public comment is now closed, and we now move to commission discussions on item number 1. Would someone like to make a motion to adopt findings to allow teleconference meetings under California Government Code Section 54953E?
I so move that we accept the teleconference meetings under California Code 54953E.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you. So we have a motion from Commissioner Wardell Garaduzzi and a second from Vice President Huang to approve this resolution.
I will now take the roll call. Commissioners, please say aye or no when I call your name. President Wolf.
Aye.
Commissioner Ono.
Aye.
Commissioner Mall.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We now move to agenda item number 2, general public comment. Members of the public who wish to make general public comment on WebEx, please remember to raise your hand in the bottom left-hand, right-hand portion of the screen. And if you've called into the WebEx dial-in number, please press *3 to line up to speak. We are going to begin with public comment from members of the public present here in the Koret Auditorium, and then move to our WebEx audience. General public comment is now open here in Koret.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Glenn Rogers. I'm a landscape architect, and I am a person who lives right across the street from the proposed Ocean View Library. And I wanted to comment that that particular location is very dangerous for children. That there are, I have a picture here. I know you can't see it very well, and I will send it to the Commission by email. From District 7, which is my district, and District 11 is the district that the Ocean View Library is going to be in. Despite the fact that it's just across the street from me, it's in a whole new district. And that being said, there are no less than 5 crossings on across the dangerous highway, Alamany Boulevard and Sagamore Street, both very heavily traveled streets. As a matter of fact, to give you a little history of Alamany Boulevard, before 280 was present, it was the only way to get downtown from Westlake. So historically, it has a tremendous amount of traffic. That being said, Fairlawn Street is a very narrow street. It's more narrow than you can possibly imagine when 2 cars are coming against each other. They have to slow down to a standstill so that they don't knock off their mirrors. That being said, you know, this is considered a free location. That is to say, it's part of the green belt. The green belt, the Brotherhood Green Belt was made that way because there was an earthquake fault there, and that used to be a abandoned stream bed. And so all the soils in that location are very organic. And to build there is very problematic because must be 50 eucalyptus trees, some of them with 3-foot diameter trunks. And not only do you have to take down the tree, but you have to take the roots out. And that would be an incredibly expensive opportunity. That being said, one of the solutions to stop the traffic from being a problem would be to put in a stoplight. Stoplights are very expensive. They almost cost $1 million. In this particular location, there would be a need for 2 stoplights, one for Sagamore Street and one from Alamany Boulevard. And I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I'll see you next month.
Thank you. Any further public comment here in Koret?
Good afternoon again. Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. I mentioned those methods of getting in touch because those who are on the remote are not able to come up and say, gee, I liked what you said, let's have a cup of coffee and discuss some more. Or the opposite, didn't really agree with what you said and here's why. And that kind of interchange is not possible when people are participating remotely, either between each other or between the folks in the room and the remote participants. I wanted to say again that I have been speaking repeatedly about the library's pushing of a whole range of privacy-threatening and other kinds of harmful internet activity, including its continual pushing of Facebook. Get Social, twice in the monthly calendar, and it includes getting on Facebook and other major folks who supply that sort of connection, social media. I'm concerned also with what I've mentioned before as a general matter, the increasing computerization of library programs and materials. And what that does is it disenfranchises folks who have poor or no access to computers. I've noticed more and more that there are materials that are only available virtually with no print available. And of course, many, if not most of most of the library's available programs, author talks and the like, are available only virtually. And as I started a year and a half ago, it is still the case. You do not even bother to inform people that Zoom programs are accessible to people by telephone, ordinary telephone. And that, again, disenfranchises a lot of people. And I think it's disenfranchising the most those who are most vulnerable. You can check out the report that I've frequently mentioned, the City and County of San Francisco Digital Equity Strategic Plan for 2019 to 24. Minorities are the most affected by a lack of access, as are poorer people, older people, people with not proficiency in English, and the disabled. So your library is pulling away more and more from the folks who have less, and that free and equal access promise is not happening.
Thank you. Any further public comment here in Correct Auditorium? Seeing that there is no further comment here, we are going to turn to public comment, general public comment through WebEx. Operations, if there are any commenters in the remote queue, please begin to put the commenters through.
Madam President, at this time, there are no remote commenters in the queue. I'll pause to allow commenters to join if they so choose. Madam President, there are no commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. And thank you, Mr. Rogers and Mr. Warfield, for your comments today. Hearing no further requests for comment, general public comment is now closed. And we will now turn to agenda item number 3, which is the discussion on the library's Racial Equity Action Plan. We're all thrilled and delighted to have this presentation today and very much look forward to a robust discussion following. So I now turn it over to our city librarian, Michael Lambert.
Thank you, President Wolf, and good evening, Commissioners. Library staff appreciates this opportunity to share a progress report on the library's activities to accomplish the goals outlined in our Racial Equity Action Plan. You may recall the library originally drafted our Phase 1 Racial Equity Action Plan at the tail end of 2020, and we presented this to the Library Commission at the December meeting that year. Since that time, the library's Racial Equity Committee, with COO Maureen Singleton's leadership as our management team liaison, they've been working closely with Library Human Resources and other units like our Research Strategy and Analytics team to methodically work through all the objectives. I I want to acknowledge the leadership of our co-chairs of the Racial Equity Committee, Shauna Sherman, our African American Center Program Manager, and Alejandro Gallegos, Community Engagement Manager. They've been contributing to this work from day one, going back to early 2018. And this was before even the city's Office of Racial Equity even existed. I also want to recognize Library Human Resources, our Senior Personnel Analyst, Maria Mastro-Kyriakos, for her leadership and her work as our dedicated Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Analyst for Library Human Resources. It's taken a village to arrive at this point with myriad contributions from a diverse cross-functional team. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the library's Racial Equity Manager, Naomi Jelks, who will be delivering this report this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Naomi Jelks. I'm the Racial Equity Manager here at the library, and I'm going to bring you up to speed on our Racial Equity Plan Progress Report. Michael gave great shout-outs and praise to staff who have gotten us to this point, the Racial Equity Committee, the co-chairs, Maureen, Human Resources, Lori Regler's team, and the Research Strategy and Analytics team under Randy McClure, and the sundry other departments that have done a lot of the heavy lifting for us since 2018. Our racial equity plan really came to life as a result of the really great work that the city as a whole is doing to center racial equity and really have a positive impact both on the patrons that we serve and internally the staff who work here to really center racial equity in the work that we do. And so the report that you've already seen, it's on our website, the initial racial equity plan, as well as this progress report that I'm going to summarize. It consists of 7 basic areas. For the 7 sections that I'm going to report out on, Human Resources did a lot of heavy lifting for us. They really focused on the first 5, and then the rest of us, the racial equity team, worked on the final 2 sections. So I'm going to briefly go over these 7 sections and some of the successes we've seen. So for the hiring and recruitment, some really great accomplishments we've had to date is we hired a human resource senior analyst and myself to focus on DEI efforts of the library. We've HR reviewed processes and identified issues and implemented action plans to help move this work forward. HR participated in citywide efforts to develop equitable and inclusive hiring practices, which I sit on lots of hiring panels for the library, which I see bearing fruit in interviews that we do to hire up within the library. And in FY19, we updated specifications in some of the 3600 classification series, which are the librarians here at at SFPL. Retention and promotion, the library HR worked with COVID Command Center to address and resolve library DSW issues related to work conditions, timekeeping, leaves, and work schedules. It feels like yesterday that many of us were deployed as DSW workers, and I commend our human resources for the really important work they did in engaging with DHR to support our staff so that they could do their part to help support the city during this crisis. Identified employee mobility barriers through annual staff surveys so we get feedback from staff on what's going on in real time. And kind of related to that, in supporting staff, work to implement and kind of share with staff growing your career and effective interviewing skills training to support the professional development growth of our staff here at the library. Discipline and separation, library HR collaborated with the Racial Equity Committee to promote DHR anti-bias trainings, which are quite good. You know, some of our trainings are better than others, but I really feel the DEI workshops that the city offers are really strong, and I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from staff on them. Conducted analysis of library disciplinary action and separations over the last 3 years to identify trends and potential biases. And conducted internal HR review and made improvements to current tracking processes and tools for disciplinary actions and separations. Diverse and equitable leadership, developed annual recruitment goals and shared with REC and senior leadership for feedback. Assess current level of DHR implicit bias trainings by senior leadership, which I'm proud to say is 100% compliance. And collaborated internally to develop anonymous feedback tool, which was launched January of this year. So I use that quite extensively to kind of go through those, the feedback that we get from staff and figure out how we can improve our operations. Mobility and professional development. Increased a budget for more training opportunities. I think staff development is really important to our organization, so I'm proud to say that we have more money allocated to that. Develop tip sheet for supervisors on how to have effective conversations about professional development with their staff. Again, supporting staff so they can grow to be whoever they want to be. And added questions to the annual staff survey about benefits staff would like to see and learn more about. Organizational culture of inclusion and belonging. SFPL Library Commission adopted racial equity resolution in June 2021. Thank you. Hired a 1244 diversity, equity, and inclusion HR analyst in February of 2021. Hired 922 racial equity manager for public services April of this year, which is me. And launched the monthly BIPOC affinity group meetings in November of 2021, which we've gotten a lot out of. Boards and commissions provided library commission members demographics in the department annual report, beginning with FY20. Adopted a Ramatouche Ohlone land acknowledgement resolution in April of 2021. Adopted a racial equity resolution in June 2021. And provided closed captioning for remote meetings and translation services when requested. So our next steps, we have submitted our progress report to the Office of Racial Equity as of May 2nd. And the process is we submit and we wait for feedback from the Office of Racial Equity on that progress report. The progress report is posted on SFPL's webpage. So for yourself and the public to review. And I think in terms of wrapping up, well, that would wrap up phase 1. And upcoming fiscal will be dealing with phase 2 of the racial equity plan. And I'm rolling up my sleeves and I'm ready to work. Thank you for your support and continued encouragement.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and welcome to your new position.
Thank you.
We're really delighted that you're here.
Thank you.
We will now open this up to public comment, and before we go to comment here from the commissioners. So we'll begin with public comment here in Corrett Auditorium, and then we will move to comment from people who are listening in or watching from WebEx. For those of you who are connected to us via WebEx, please be sure to raise your hand and use the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. If you have called into WebEx, please press *3 to line up to speak. So we will begin here in Corrett Auditorium. Public comment is now open.
Good afternoon. Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. I see lots of eyes averted. I guess it's not important what I have to say about this matter, although you say it's an important matter to you. I've got your 59-page progress report, and I have to say it's what seems to me pretty thin soup. The report says, first of all, there's no author listed, there's no table of contents, and there are no page numbers. Not very helpful for somebody trying to review and comment. So on the first page, it says some significant things. As a group, Black and African Americans, which make up 6.5% of our workforce, are more dissatisfied at work due to racial disparities. The survey highlighted the fact that a lack of time and a safe space to address and discuss challenging issues related to race were barriers to advancing racial equity initiatives. The survey also underscored many of our part-time staff in the neighborhood branches felt that the 4-day work week versus 3-day week was a barrier to advancing their educational goals toward full-time library work. That was a big fight that the staff had with you and especially the library administration when they changed over the hours and the days in that way a fairly recent time ago. Library wasn't very interested in what the folks had to say at that time. It mentions here that the head of the library started the whole business in 2018 with the library's Racial Equity Task Force. What's been the progress? 4 years have gone by. What do we have to show for it? Standing committees, studies, organizational culture improvements, and so on. One of the most painful things to read, and I haven't fully reviewed this at all, cultivated partnerships, blah, blah, blah. The first item, bulleted item on the third page, is that the library eliminated fines, which disproportionately impacted low-income communities in 2019. We and progressive librarians have advocated that for years, and you ignored that. Then when you did it in the absolute minimum way, proposing legislation that would only cut the fines going forward, and we raised hell. You didn't vote on it, and 2 or 3 months later suddenly found that you could take the fines that were on the books off the books. But even before you did that, you had the treasurer and tax collector go after the folks with the biggest fines owing.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any further public comment here in Corrett Auditorium? Seeing that there's no further comment here, we will now ask operations to see who might be available, who is there to make public comment via WebEx. Operations, if there's anyone wanting to make public comment, could you please put them through?
Madam President, at this time, there are no commenters in the queue. I'll pause to allow commenters to join the queue. Madam President, there are no commenters in the queue.
Thank you, operations. Hearing that there are no further requests for public comment here in Corrett Auditorium or via WebEx, public comment for this item is now closed, and we now move to commission discussion on item number 4, Racial Equity Action Plan Update. I know Naomi is here to answer any questions along with City Librarian Michael Lambert. We had there was a wonderful presentation, and then there is this very detailed, wonderful report that we were all given in advance to be able to read. So I turn to my fellow commissioners. Commissioner Mall.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Naomi. It's nice to see you in your new job. I hope you're still reading all those good One City, One books, though. So Naomi, the item DEI interview questions were developed and are a mandatory part of each interview. Could you just give some examples of what those interview questions might be?
So I don't have at top of mind the specific questions, but in general, the way the panels are set up for librarians, there's anywhere between 5 and 7 questions. And so depending on the position you're applying for, if you're a branch manager, for example, the question would read something like, kind of trying to tease out of the applicant their comfort level working in diverse environments, their experience working with diverse staffing. I think that's what stands out to me the most in terms of the questions trying to gauge a fuller sense of who the applicant is, considering some of our initiatives related to racial equity. So we just want to make sure the applicant is a good fit for what we anticipate the work will be.
Aren't there some guidelines that it's not, like certain questions aren't okay to ask in this, in an interview like this? Or?
Oh, absolutely. There's a HR analyst there, and so all the questions are vetted before the group of interviewees sit down to interview the applicant. So all the questions are above board. They've been vetted for appropriateness, so we're not asking pointed questions related to someone's, the way they present, but really trying to gauge the actual work that they've done either as professional librarians or just in life as it relates to what we see as the work that they would need to be doing as a librarian.
And has this, you've done this already in your...
Lots of times, yeah.
And you get the information, you feel comfortable getting the information that you need?
Yeah, it gives you a flavor for who the applicant is, and it's not, I don't feel like the question is phrased in a way that would feel oppressive or intrusive, because it is an interview. So you're there to provide information on your professional work life and who you are on a whole, as a whole, and why you would be a good fit or not for the library. And so I think we do a really good job as a system of ensuring that those questions can actually be answered. They're not like trick SAT questions. Like, they're pretty straightforward to kind of, let the applicant know what we want. I feel like most of our questions are pretty straightforward because, you don't want to trick the applicant. You want to be very straightforward with what it is that we're looking for in an applicant.
So somebody, for example, could be not a good fit if they've only worked in a certain community and hasn't had diverse experience.
No, not necessarily. I mean, for me, as when I sit on a panel, you have to look at the totality of who the applicant is. So not having experience, let's say, if we're hiring for Chinatown or Bayview, in my mind, I might be like, okay, this is someone who has lots of experience working with this community, but that doesn't eliminate you if you have not. So I think that that's generally the consensus of panelists. That's not really how we judge who's a good applicant or not.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Mall. Vice President Huang.
Thank you. Naomi, thank you so much for the report. I just have one question for you on the slide that with the title Organizational Culture of Inclusion and Belonging. The last bullet says launched monthly BIPOC affinity group meetings, November 2021. Could you just give us some more detail on how those have gone? Just highlights, areas for improvement, some just additional commentary on the engagement with those affinity group meetings.
Sure. So I think some of the feedback that we've gotten over the years for BIPOC staff, Black, Indigenous, people of color, who work within the library, all classifications, is really wanting to have a safe space where they can discuss work-related issues or concerns. Sometimes it bleeds over to what's happening in the larger world that we live in, and just kind of be in community with one another. From what I've experienced, I think as we try to move towards a post-COVID environment, it's especially important for us, even though it's still online, to be in community with one another and talk through issues. And my experience has been the issues that have been raised have informed the racial equity work and the areas that we want to focus on to improve on the one hand. And it's also kind of broken down some of the silos within our organization where it's not so much branches and main, where a group of BIPOC folks who are talking through issues to increase understanding and to create a more welcoming environment in our workspaces, whether they're in the branches or main, but also being sensitive to not always centering librarians, but really looking to support custodial staff, security, and other departments that when folks think about the library, they're not always thinking about that. So we were really intentional about who would be invited and whose voices we really wanted to hear. And so I think that, their monthly meetings, they're pretty well attended. But of course, our first priority is ensuring that we have staffing at the public service desks. But the feedback that I've gotten from staff is that they feel like of all the different work groups that have come out of racial equity that have where they feel like their voice can be heard the most to affect change, the affinity group is probably number one.
Great. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Huang. Other comments? Commissioner Wardell-Garaducci?
Thank you so much, Naomi. This is really wonderful work. You had opportunity for the city librarian to provide some leadership reflections. I was wondering if you would be able to provide some of your own reflections as being a steward of this process, and then picking up the work of the co-chairs and other racial equity group that began almost 24 months ago.
You know, it's funny, when I applied for this position, I felt like I was a really strong candidate, and I still feel like I was the strongest candidate. But once you're selected and you start doing the work, it's very humbling. You know, for folks like Alejandro and Shauna and the folks who have been doing this work since 2018, and starting to go through the material that has come out of that work, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot to dive into and understand and sit and digest. But it's also, again, it's just very humbling to kind of move into that space where I will be doing that. They're passing the baton. There'll always be a resource, but they've done their work, and now it's my time with the team, the new racial equity committee that we build in the library, to take it to the next level, the next phase. And so I feel like I've always been very much a public servant, and so I'm here to serve. And so part of that is listening to staff and really sitting with and hearing the successes that they've seen in the library and some of the things that we still need to improve on, and not being, you know, reactive to that, because, you know, the work is never done. You know, there's always going to be work to be done. And so for me, I just really feel strongly that, you know, doing a lot of active listening now, so as we move towards FY23, I feel much more confident in understanding more fully, both internally and within the city family, where we are and where we need to go. And also continuing to dialogue with staff to make sure I'm doing the very best for staff and for SFPL as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wardell-Garaducci. Commissioner Lopez?
Naomi, thank you so much for the presentation. I have a question on your slide on mobility and professional development. Can you describe or elaborate how people within different classification are informed of the different trainings or professional development that that are available for them? And then, and I know you just new to this position and you probably do not have the information, or it was probably here and I haven't gone through, but well, how would you describe the different professional development that is being offered, and in terms of depending on the jobs of the different staff?
So I'm going to start with librarians because that's my background. So I feel as though the trainings that the city offers, between what the city offers and the more specialized or more tailored programming, coursework or workshops that the library develops, I feel like it's quite good. And so I feel like as we do a training, I was talking with the Racial Equity Committee right before this meeting, and there was a workshop last week entitled The Impact of Privilege on Racial Equity. And so we just, the folks who attended, we all shared how, how good, how the strengths or the weaknesses of that workshop, and the feedback was quite positive. And so I believe this was a workshop offered by the city, and they felt that the totality of the program really hits on the nose how we really think, some positive ways people can think about privilege and how it relates to equity work and the format. There was some feedback that, some aspects of it could make folks who come from more modest backgrounds feel a little bit, uncomfortable because some of the questions that were asked. And I think that sort of feedback is stuff that we want, because we want to have workshops that are strong and where everyone feels respected, heard, seen, etc. So I think that's one type of training that we do. I think that internally, in terms of the specific trainings that we've developed, if we've consulted and kind of developed our own trainings, I'm not as on top of that, and maybe Michael can speak to that piece a little bit.
Sure. Thank you for the question. And I attended that training. That was an excellent training. I attended that on Tuesday. But as far as the library's approach to staff development and employee engagement, we're in this transition moment. We've been without a dedicated training officer for over 2 years now, and we're on the verge of appointing a new human resources manager. This person will roll up to our HR director, and this person will be the single point of accountability for organizational development, staff training. And so we will have somebody dedicated to develop both an internal curriculum, but also to raise awareness of all the incredible training available through the city's Department of Human Resources. So we're very close to making that appointment, and it's going to give us capacity, dedicated capacity, to put the structure and the systems in place so that we can make training more accessible for all of our workforce.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bolander.
Yes, thanks for the presentation. On slide discipline and separation on bullet number 2, there's an analysis that I think that the department did, or correct me if I'm wrong if they're not. Do you have any conclusions out of that, or will that be under a separate kind of report? I was trying to find it in the packet. I couldn't find it because that seems to be pretty important to see any trends that could have been, so we can prevent those, of course, in the future.
So I believe that's still being analyzed. Okay. We're still staffing up on the RSA group committee. So there's a lot of data that we have collected that still needs further analysis. So thank you for that question. So when we do have that, I'm happy to come back and share that with the commission.
That'd be great.
So we can dive into that.
Thank you.
I did want to circle back for your second question, Commissioner Lopez, in terms of the other classifications. So some of the feedback that we've gotten from custodial, from security, is wanting to see different types of trainings that really speak to their work experience and what they do for the library. And so we're still working through what that can look like. We're very open to that because we are sensitive to the feedback, the pointed feedback that we've gotten from both of those departments. So a lot of this work we've done some work to date, and we'll continue to fine tune so that we can improve how we serve each other and how we're serving the public.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Ono.
Yes, thank you very much. Congratulations, Naomi, and welcome aboard. I'm really glad to see that you're here in person. I just wanted to also thank everyone who's on this list and also on this team. I know it's everyone, there's a lot more people that are here that have been involved in this, especially since you said it's 2018 that they originally started. And I just want to thank the library just as a whole. You guys started before the city did. Mm-hmm. And I'm very competitive, and I like that we're always number one. So I just have to get that out there. And then I also wanted to go back to the next steps, because that my competitive self again. I know you're going to be reviewing the plan with the Office of Racial Equity. What what is involved in that review, and will we be getting additional reports from you, and how often?
So the process is, since we've submitted our plan, they will provide written feedback, and then there are, I believe, monthly racial equity leadership meetings that I attend, where I'm certain there'll be individual or private consultation, but also on a whole, because I'm pretty sure there'll be trends. If you look at all of the reports submitted, there'll be some trends that they can just collectively speak to. And so whatever feedback we get from ORE, we will share with the commission.
It'll be like you guys meet on a monthly basis with all the other leaders of?
Correct, or as needed, more if we need to.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to my fellow commissioners. Such thoughtful comments, questions. Naomi, we are so delighted that you are here leading this effort. And we do thank everybody. It does take a village, but actually it's going to take every single staff member at the public library to really make this work. And so I know that you really have the respect and the support to really bring everyone together to really make a difference and to make real impact that will be long-term and won't be on the surface, but will be very much focused on shaping this institution moving forward. So we thank you for that. And we look forward to ongoing updates and reports. And we hope that you'll share. I mean, you've only been in the position, I think, 6 weeks at this point. So I have to say, you handled every question with such poise and grace. I was very impressed by the range of conversations that ensued. But we also want to know what isn't working, what the challenges are, because we're here to support you and to give you what you need to really make this institution the best it can possibly be and be that competitive and be the leader in the community. So just know that we're here to support you, even if it's occasionally 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We're here with you at every step you take. And we are just delighted that the entire library has come together in this way under Michael and Maureen's leadership to really make a difference in this community for all the people we serve. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam President.
So now we turn to item number 4, which is always a favorite, which is the City Librarian's Report.
Thank you, President Wolf. I have a number of reports this evening, and I'm pleased to highlight the first report, our celebration of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. As the first Asian American to serve as the city librarian for the city and county of San Francisco, and as one of the few Asian American department heads for the city, it's not lost on me how important it is for the library to celebrate the culture and heritage of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. Collectively, this community represents over 1/3 of our population in San Francisco. And I'm proud of this library's efforts to celebrate diversity and inclusion throughout the year. The history and heritage of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders is U.S. history, and it is the heritage of our country. This year's celebration is special because we're benefiting from the amazing artwork of Bay Area artist Mel Veracruz, who graciously allowed us to use their artwork for our Weaving Stories theme collateral. This year is also special because of the intention in acknowledging Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders fully. In the past, these distinct ethnic groups have been subsumed within the Asian American or APA umbrella, which has caused feelings of marginalization. With that, I am proud and excited to introduce our first presenter, Youth Development Coordinator Ileana Pulu, who will share more about Weaving Stories.
Hello, good evening. Esteemed commissioners, again, my name is Ileana Pulu, and I am the Youth Development Coordinator here for the San Francisco Public Library. And I am delighted and honored to share some of our programs that we featured this month. I'm a librarian, and I'm also Native Hawaiian, Mexican, and Portuguese raising a family here that includes a daughter that is Samoan as well. So this means a lot to me, and I'm truly delighted to be a part of the change, the past, the present, and the future. So again, I just wanted to note the beautiful artwork by Mel Veracruz, our feature artist for the series. Veracruz is our local artist who worked in partnership with the library to produce a stunning piece. The centerpiece painting features a bouquet of flowers that have symbolic ties to A and HPI cultures, including chrysanthemums, cherry blossoms, hibiscus, plumerias, and symbolizes rejuvenation, resilience, and vitality. Created with stencils, acrylic paint, and spray art on fiberglass, the art is exhibited to view in person on the 3rd floor here at the main library, and there is a glorious banner on Grove Street that I hope you do not miss as you walk by. Got it. Okay. So we moved into the month of May, welcoming community at both in-person and virtual programs, focusing on movement. On May 7th, the Presidio branch hosted the Flying Angels Chinese Dance Company, a group we've had many times before. On May 14th, in partnership with Ray Studios, we had a group of captivated dancers joining us on Zoom for a peppy 45-minute K-pop session. And this coming weekend on May 21st, Rahiti Polynesian Dance will be at Western Addition Branch, and Halau Ha'akeo Okinohi will be at Ortega, Parkside, and Visitation Valley branches. A short anecdote I'd like to share about the reach that these programs have had. In 2019, the Halau visited the Marina branch, and a community member connected with them and their kumu, and kumu means teacher. This person was just so riveted, she then became a student, so a haumana is a hula student. And in 2020, she participated as a dancer during their virtual presentation, which is available on the San Francisco Public Library's YouTube page. So it kind of came full circle. And I found out about that in our tech check right before the program. I'd also like to just share that Jerry Deere, a librarian here, is in the 9th year of partnership with the Asian Pacific Islander American Biography Project with the San Francisco State University. Another invitation to visit 2 exhibits showcases here at the main library that center on World War II veterans, specifically Japanese, Chinese, and Filipino veterans who earned the Congressional Gold Medal. The Children's Center wall display on the 2nd floor hosts the APIA World War II Veterans Wall of Fame. And at the Chinese Center on the 3rd floor, you can find the exhibit Fighting for the American Dream, APIA World War II Military Gold Medalists, which will be up through July 31st, 2022. A little more about Mel, our featured artist. Mel Veracruz is a multimedia artist who migrated to the U.S. from the Philippines and is based in the Bay Area. With a background in graphic design and advertising, he incorporates painting and screen printing techniques along with the use of readily available materials. Mel created 2 videos showing his art process and held a Q&A session that is available to watch on YouTube as well. Through a partnership with Career Girls, we hosted a panel with experts on mindfulness and self-care. Our panelists were from the Hmong community, and it was a riveting discussion that they were able to offer. We're excited to welcome Tracy Williams, a Pacifica artist and the 2021 Oakland Art Clash competition champion, to the mix here later this month on May 31st. And of course, we need to offer resources, information, and a discussion on books. So on May 25th, San Francisco Public Library is teaming up with the New York Public Library to talk about Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander representation in children's and young adult literature. I'll be in dialogue with Jen Wu from San Francisco Public Library and Crystal Chen from New York Public Library to chat about titles, authors, illustrators, and issues. Crystal Chen recently chaired the Asian Pacific American Librarians Association, APALA's Youth Literature Award, where Jen Wu sat as a member. So it's also an opportunity to bring more awareness to these awards. And speaking of fantastic partners and loving books, I'm happy to share a little bit about another partnership with New York Public, SFUSD Libraries, and our library. Librarians from the Chatham Square branch of NYPL in New York's Chinatown reached out to us in fall 2021 with an idea, and we worked together with other stakeholders to bring it to fruition. It was a bi-coastal book club for 8th graders. So we were looking to foster community, encourage reading, and develop an understanding of different perspectives within and about the Asian American community. It also emphasized the important role of libraries and educators in creating safe spaces for discussion, both within their physical walls and virtually. 2 YA books were distributed to about 100 8th graders in schools. So you see David Tung Can't Have a Girlfriend Until He Gets Into an Ivy League College by Ed Lin. What a mouthful. And that is set in the greater NYC tri-state area with roots in both New Jersey Chinatown and New York's Manhattan's Chinatown. And then Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe, that's set here in San Francisco in the 1950s in Chinatown and North Beach neighborhoods. In New York, the teens were from PS 126 and PS 184 in Chinatown. And in San Francisco, the teens were from Marina, Roosevelt, and Hoover middle schools. And these students initially connected with each other in a welcome mixer. They read each book. They submitted questions prior to the virtual author visits. On March 23rd, they sat in for a discussion with Ed Lin, and then on April 25th with Melinda Lowe. And both of those Q&As were hosted by a librarian from San Francisco or New York. And they're both available on YouTube too. But in our final event, the students got together again virtually, and it was just kind of like a time to ask each other questions. So some of the questions that they asked were like, what's the price of public transportation? How do you get to Oakland? What is Manhattan really like? Like it was pretty amazing to be able to have that access and that range, the perception of each other's cities, food recommendations, and they also offered us feedback about having a monthly book club, incorporating other cities, states, countries, and genres. And we were lucky at the time to have hosted Roosevelt Middle School here at the Mix, so we were able to have them here physically in our library while this was going on with New York. It was logistically such a juggernaut because of the time difference and the schools and just everything that was going on, but it was truly a wonderful experience for I think everyone involved. Adult programming is seeing great attendance numbers for virtual and in-person events as we continue to explore how to bring events to everyone and the accessibility of virtual programming while we welcome our community back into our physical space. In honor of AA and HPI and Pride, we've selected Melinda Lowe's coming-of-age story unlike any other, Last Night at the Telegraph Club. So if I already didn't convince you to read that because 8th graders read it, you're going to have to read it now because she's coming back. It's a story of unprecedented authenticity as well as emotional and historical candor. But most of all, it's a story that resonates with the human experience and desire for love and acceptance. She just swept awards with this book, and she's such a delight and just so smart, just wicked smart. So we have 2 events to engage with this book and this author. A couple other adult events that I'm going to share about include author and Professor Russell Jung, co-founder of Stop AAPI Hate, who discussed the shifting media landscape amidst anti-Asian hate incidents during the COVID pandemic. This virtual event had many well-known academics and activists in attendance. And we're just bringing it. On Saturday, May 7th, Melody Yan entertained our Richmond library goers with the Chinese Gu Zhang performing contemporary music, traditional, and her own creations. On May 9th and May 11th, we continued our successful small business spotlight highlighting Real Soul, a visual storytelling series working with educators, artists, and activists, and Diosa Blooms, a Filipinx-owned, family-owned flower and plant shop located in San Francisco's Mission District. On May 11th, there was a nature boost with our ongoing partners, a feature of our ongoing partnership with the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, and had over 100 people in attendance in the virtual library learning about the history of the uprooting of Chinatown after the 1906 earthquake. This past Saturday, there were two amazing events. Right here on the Correct stage, our librarian at the Filipino Center, Abe Ignacio, brought together grassroots organizers and scholar activists to discuss their essays in contemporary Asian American activism, building movements for liberation, but also to reflect on the state of Bay Area Asian American activism, past, present, and future. And then at Chinatown, we met up with about 50 members of the library community, along with Sony artist and photographer Zabina Dang and Catherine Lang, Miss San Francisco, for a photo walk through the historic district. It was so fun to get outside, and many folks commented and thanked us for having such a fun event. And if you haven't seen those photos, I would totally recommend it. They looked amazing. Just joy was just emanating. And then on May 16th, there was an amazing 800 plus registered attendees for film screening Chinatown Rising. The screening was followed by a discussion with Joshua Clark, producer and director. This documentary film about the Asian American movement from the perspective of the young residents on the front lines of their historic neighborhood in transition featured Harry Chuck, Josh's father. Exquisite unreleased footage has captured a divided community struggles for self-determination. Some great comments came to us following in the days following the events. It was one of the best SFPL programs presented. Grateful for all that you do. Thank you for a fantastic program tonight. The film was wonderful and educational, and having the Q&A with Josh after really added a lot. Thanks to Harry, Josh, Anissa, and all who made this happen. What a marvelous experience. I still have tears in my eyes, and this one, thanks to you and SFPL for sharing Harry and Josh Chuck's Chinatown Rising, which is powerful, personal, and collective history with civic engagement lessons for the present. It was awesome to see folks I've known since the 1960s look so good in the 2020s. This Saturday, our Chinese Center librarian, Hai Ching Chen, brings photographer Andrea Lowe and writer Valerie Liu to this stage to discuss Chinatown Pretty, the book which captures the fabulous street style of senior citizens across 6 North American Chinatown. Another Instagram recommendation. You have to look at that. And then on May 24th, Russell Lowe joins the virtual library to discuss his second book, The All-American Crew, the inspiring true story of teamwork, camaraderie, and Americans at war. Christy Oshiro shares the Japanese art of taiko, where crowds will feel the thunderous sound of drums vibrating through their branches. We heard that a family traveled all the way from Sonoma to attend this event at Mission Bay Branch. And the Oshiro fans are lucky because she has several more performances at Visitation Valley and West Portal. So thank you so much, commissioners, for this opportunity to share. I also have to thank the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library for their generous support. And of course, there's always more information in our print newsletter and in our webpage. Just one more slide from me is about our 26th annual Effie Lee Morris lecture featuring author Nicola Yoon, which, so save the date. That's coming up pretty soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ileana. So many great things happening. I attended that Chinatown Rising documentary. It was absolutely riveting, and there was so much demand for that event. We're going to do it again, but we're going to bring it in the Correct in person. All right, next up, we have our early learning coordinator, Jason Hill, with a presentation on Dia de los Niños, Dia de los Libros.
Hello, commissioners. Thank you for letting me speak about this joyous event. There's like one word for this. I'm Jason, by the way, early learning coordinator. One description for this that keeps popping up is joy, joy, joy. This day was so amazing. Dia de los Niños, Dia de los Libros. It was held in Park Niños Unidos in the Mission. It was actually the first time we've been in person since 2019. And it really showed, the community really showed up. I heard one of you might have been there. So as you know, it was amazing. So many people showed up. We had 550 participants or more of all ages. We had some great entertainment. Shalita Vinyl Club was providing the DJ music, so people were dancing. Big Top Bubbles was there, because who doesn't like bubbles? And then we had family entertainers Familia Peña Gobea, who closed us out. We gave away over 1,000 Spanish bilingual books. We gave away every single one of them, from toddler age to teenage. We had 11 community partner tables. They all had activities from bookmaking to bookmark making to murals. It was Birth Companion Community Center, Chicano, Latino, and Mission Family Resource System, Felton Institute, Mission Head Start, Mission Neighborhood Centers, San Francisco Children in Nature, Tandem Partners in Early Learning, Wu Yi Children's Services, Luna's Press Books, Edgewood Center for Children and Families, and Casa Corazon. And they were amazing partners throughout the event. We had 285 visitors to our bookmobile of all ages also, and gave away 10 new library cards to little ones that didn't have them. Let me get to the next slide. And we couldn't have done this without our early literacy network partners. They and myself did the organizing and planning all together. And we have First Five of San Francisco, Felton Institute, Tandem Partners in Early Learning, Good Samaritan Family Resource Center, Calais 24, and Mission Promise Neighborhood. And to close this out, I think you might have these pictures. So these are just some of the pictures that were amazing and fun. We have some of our librarians. The Mission librarians were there to talk about their new site that's opening, the temporary site, so that was awesome. Kids playing in the park, the bookmobile, and just these last pictures that you can see, bubbles, because bubbles are so much fun. And that's it. That was Dios de los Niños, Dios de los Libros. Thank you for having me, commissioners.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate your leadership on this initiative, and I also want to acknowledge our Youth Services Manager, Christy Estrovitz. She's been leading the charge on DIA for over a decade. I don't know how many years exactly, but it's a fantastic event. Thank you, Dr. Lopez, for showing up. There was lots of joy for sure. And I also want to just give Jason a shout out. He was recently appointed the manager of the Mix at SFPL, our Teen Digital Media Lab. So he's going to be transitioning to a new role. Well, that's a good segue to our next presentation, a personnel announcement. It gives me great pleasure to announce the promotion of Rebecca Alcala Veraflor to the position of Chief of Branches. As Chief of Branches, Rebecca, yes, let's give her a hand. So Rebecca is going to oversee the largest division in the organization, both in terms of personnel and facilities. And she's going to help shepherd major renovations of the historic Mission Branch Library, Chinatown Branch Library, as well as help plan for the construction of a new regional branch library for Ocean View. As city librarian, I have observed Rebecca's growth and development for several years now, and I know how extremely fortunate we are to have Rebecca on our leadership team. She brings a wealth of experience to this role. She has served capably as the acting Chief of Branches since February, and she's been the Assistant Chief of Branches for the past several years. She's taking the helm at a critical time as we continue to restore library services and prepare for the future. So I want to give a hearty congratulations to Rebecca on her well-deserved promotion. She's been working so hard. And I want to acknowledge she is the first Latinx librarian to be appointed into the permanent position as Chief of Branches. Rebecca is here this evening. Rebecca, would you like to say a few words?
Good afternoon, Library Commissioners. Michael Lambert, thank you for that very warm welcome and congratulations. My name is Rebecca Alcalá Veraflor, and I am the Chief of Branches. Very excited to take the helm after watching the presentation from our Community Programs and Partnerships colleagues, a unit I used to work in, so I know the amount of work that goes into it, and hearing about the great work that we get to do in the branch division. I'm just excited to be in this position, working with all of you. I look forward to presenting before you on the great work that we're doing, and I'm proud to be SFPL. I've been here since 2011, started as the Excelsior branch manager. Never thought in my mind that I would be here. This picture I sent to Michael kind of as a joke, but also, I grew up, my parents immigrated here from Mexico, so I grew up here and there, ni de aquí ni de allá, kind of not fitting in either world, but, going back to Mexico in my grandma's town in Nayarit, spending time in the town, which is a country town. My first pet was a baby chick. And so spent a lot of time around farm animals. And so when I got to take my girls, and sadly I haven't been able to take them to Mexico because of the pandemic, they're young, but being able to go to a farm with them and show them, the goats and the chickens, and this is in Vallejo, really close to us, it just brought a huge smile to my face and a lot of wonderful memories and smells that if you've ever grown up or been around country, that is just, it permeates. So I sent it as a joke, but also, yes, this is who I am. This is Rebecca. And so thank you. Thank you very much. And I look forward to speaking to you further.
Congratulations, Rebecca. Making Pepco moves. And that concludes the City Librarian's report.
Thank you very much, City Librarian Lambert. Before we bring it to the Commission for comments, we were now going to move it to public comment. Members of the public who wish to make public comment on WebEx, you can click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. If you've called in to the WebEx dial-in number, please press *3 to line up to speak. We will begin with public comment from members of the public present here in Corrette and then move on to the WebEx. Public comment is now open here in Corrette.
Thank you, Madam President. Peter Warfield, Executive Director, Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. Thank you to the Commission for having and for the folks for making the presentations. I wondered what Rebecca's roost was. I don't know if she's pointing apparently, and it sounds like there's a little bit of a Rebecca's roast coming up or here today, but it would be nice to have an explanation. So we're always glad to hear about programs, especially when they have to do with books. The Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month sounded like a whole series of very interesting programs. I wish there were a reading list or some pointer to a reading list for what could be a whole number of lists regarding this subject. And I'm always disappointed when I see things that come from the library that don't sufficiently have books at all or that don't give some kind of a reading list. Let me get back for a moment. Some of these programs that were mentioned, well, here, most of these programs are virtual. And that means that the very people who are least able to attend and appreciate and enjoy this are the minorities. And in particular, We are back to Effie Lee Morris annual lecture, and I talked with you about this about 1.25 years ago, about how this wonderful librarian, a black children's librarian, after she retired, but well before she died, had this annual lecture, virtual only, and no information that Zoom programs can be attended by telephone, which most people have in one form or another, and no publicity whatsoever about that. Where could you find that out or anything else? I would like to see that the library give free and equal access to those who don't have easy access to computers. And let's talk about who's got the least. Whites on top, blacks on the bottom, Latins and Asians in the middle, according to that report that I mentioned to you earlier. And I think you could also do other things to make these things more accessible. You could have a program in the Correct Auditorium, you could have in the branches, you could have computers set up for people to watch, and so on. And again, I'm very concerned about the inequitable access when you have basically virtual only, and not even the publicity for how people can attend otherwise, like by phone. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comment here in Correct Auditorium? Seeing there is no additional public comment here in Correct, we will now turn public comment over to WebEx. The operations team will moderate the virtual public comment. Operations, if there are any commenters in the remote queue, please begin to put them through.
Madam President, there are no remote commenters in the queue at this time. Pause momentarily to allow commenters to join the queue. Madam President, there are no commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. Hearing no more further requests for comment, public comment is now closed. And we now move to the commission discussion on the city librarian's report. Commissioner Ono.
Thank you. I don't want this to sound mean, but it was really refreshing to see new faces presenting the city librarian report. Nothing against the old faces, but I did like Eliana and Jason. I had to preface that. And if you notice that I was talking with Commissioner Mall, when you mentioned last night at the Telegraph Club was an 8th grade reading, I said, that's still above my literacy level, but I will try to read it. And I think that was an excellent idea for a program. That New York and San Francisco, I mean, that is the great collaboration. So whoever thought of that, I commend them, and I would love to see that occur more often. And Jason, I love Bubbles, and I'm sure it was a great program, and I'm very glad Commissioner Lopez ran and represented us. And Rebecca, I saw you on Saturday, and you were working as your new job, presenting about Chinatown, so thank you very much. And thank you everyone at SFPL. You guys always do a great job. Thanks.
Commissioner Wardell-Garaducci.
I just want to comment that the quality and the depth and the breadth of the AAPI Native Hawaiian Asian American History Month, Engagement Month, Celebration and Uplift Month is really outstanding. Thank you so much. Can't imagine anybody ever doing anything better than that.
Thank you. That was any other comments? I just want to say thank you to Ilana and Jason and Rebecca, and especially City Librarian Michael Lambert. I think a couple of things that I took away from this is, once again, at these City Librarian reports, hearing firsthand from the team about the range and depth and breadth of what you are creating really just illuminates extraordinary efforts and skills and creativity that every person at the library brings to their work every day, and it's really inspiring. So thank you for that. I think two themes that came out for me, one is the ability and the kind of wonder wonderful way in which the library is committed to promoting from within. Today, we have witnessed 3 internal promotions being presented here, first with Naomi and then with Jason and with Rebecca. So I just want to commend the staff for giving these professional development opportunities internally, which is really part of what makes the library so great, is knowing you can grow and learn and continue to contribute in such meaningful ways. And finally, I just want to say these partnerships that you all have created are just extraordinary. Everything you do in the partnerships just makes it richer and deeper and makes the library even more of a leader. So I just love that we were doing a coast-to-coast partnership. That's kind of phenomenal, and I hope we can do more of that, both locally and nationally. So thank you for the incredible effort, because it is always harder to do it in partnership, but it is always such a reward. So thank you for that extra effort to make it that much more meaningful to everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I think Dr. Lopez also.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
To all the presenters, thank you so much. And bienvenida, Rebecca. Un placer. So welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. I just want to say that one of the things that I'm really excited about is that the library is incorporating other ways of learning as well, like, the movement. And I just feel that, it helps the people understand that libraries are not what they think or what traditionally they used to be, that there is so much more that you can learn through different venues, and that history, it's represented in different ways, and culture is represented in different ways, and people can learn. So I'm really excited with the programming because, dance is a book. It's just a movement book in a way. So I'm really excited. In terms of Dia de los Niños, Dia del Libro, it was amazing. It was fun. I wish I had kids that I could, there was music, and even the adults, there was music. The kids were dancing. The DJ was amazing. And, I got to ride on, well, not ride, but get into the Mobile, and it was great. So the community had many different ways to be appreciative to the library and all the partnerships that you're able to create. So thank you all for the presentation and the programming that you do and the staff. So Michael, great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's a fun fact. The DJ is none other than our own Rebecca Gonzalez, branch manager of the Visitation Valley branch.
Wow.
Multi-talented.
She's good.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Lopez, for giving us the flavor of having been there. Really appreciate that. We will now move on to item number 5, which is the discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the Library Commission meeting of April 21st, 2022. We will open public comment before our commission discussion on this item. Members of the public who wish to make public comment on WebEx, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. If you have called into WebEx dial-in number, please press *3 to line up to speak. We will begin with public comment here in Corrette before moving to WebEx participation. Public comment is now open here in Corrette.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. You gave the head of the Friends of San Francisco Public Library a full title, but I only got Director. I'd like that corrected. Executive Director, the one time you mention it. on item 1. Also, I would like all of the references that I make, because I take the time to do that for a reason. I'd like to see those full references to the organization and the title. With respect to item 1, I expressed concern that the teleconference meeting resolution appeared the commission could hold a meeting remotely with no specified notice required, and I said, that's wrong. And overall, this is a gigantic whitewash of any criticism, and it happens over and over again. With respect to general public comment, I talked about Facebook toxicity, how it's been repeatedly written up and testified in front of the Senate that it prefers profits over safety, and that hurts kids, and especially teenagers, and even especially teenage girls. I expressed concern about serious degradation of library services. And I was also concerned that Dr. Ray Richardson was not going to be honored, as it seemed was being promised at the last meeting. I said that there were some historical inaccuracies with regard to the Library Preservation Fund resolution, and expressed some other concerns that are not here. What Commissioner Bolander asked, I think, should go in bold. We've had that discussion previously. What you asked for ought to be in bold. With respect to talent acquisition, I expressed concern that there were huge departures, that the vacancy rate was up 50%. I hoped that we got full staffing soon. I didn't think any other city agency got the cuts of library staff for DSW as much as the library. I expressed, concerns on item 5 about increasing deficiencies for those who don't have computer access and the internet access because of virtual programs, virtual materials, more and less of the real world and the real books. And I was disappointed about the, as I said, about the adjournment not being as promised. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warfield. Any further public comment here in Corrette? Seeing there's no additional further public comment in Corrette, we will now turn to public comment through WebEx. Operations, if there are any commenters in the remote queue, please begin to put the commenters through.
Madam President, there are no remote commenters in the queue at this time.
No further requests for comment. Public comment is now closed, and we now move to the commission discussion and action on item number 5 to approve the minutes of the Library Commission meeting of April 21st. Would someone like to make a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Vice President Huang, and a second?
Second.
Commissioner Lopez. So we have a motion from Vice President Huang and a second from Commissioner Lopez to approve the meeting minutes from April 21st, 2022.
And I'll take the roll. Commissioners, please say aye or no when I call your name. President Wolf?
Aye.
Commissioner Ono?
Aye.
Commissioner Mall?
Aye.
Commissioner Wardale-Giarduzzi?
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. So now we move to our final agenda item, which is the adjournment, and we are adjourning in honor of 2 individuals, Dr. Ray Richardson and Sarita Charitar. I now turn it over to Michael Lambert, City Librarian.
Thank you, President Wolf. I appreciate the opportunity to pay tribute to 2 members of our San Francisco Public Library community. You have a copy of the obituaries in your packets. First off, library staff appreciates your consideration in acknowledging Dr. Ray Richardson during adjournment today. You may recall members of the public brought Dr. Ray's passing to our attention during public comment in recent meetings. According to the obituary, Dr. Ray Gilbert Richardson was born in Brinkley, Arkansas in 1920 and raised in Waukegan, Illinois by her father, William Gilbert. Ray was 99 years of age when she passed away on February 11th, 2020 in Oakland, California. Dr. Richardson attended Tuskegee Institute as a young teenager, where she met her future husband, Dr. Julian Richardson. They were married for 60 years and came to San Francisco in 1946, where Julian started Success Printing Company in the Fillmore District. In 1960, Ray and Julian founded what is now the oldest black bookstore in the nation, Marcus Books. Dr. Ray earned a PhD from UC Berkeley and held an honorary doctorate from the Center for Urban Black Studies at Berkeley's Graduate Theological Union. She served as the chair of the Black Studies Department at San Francisco State University for decades. During her tenure, she taught literature, critical thinking, and humanities classes. She's the first professor emerita to be retired from San Francisco State University's Black Studies Department. Ray was appointed to various positions and commissions by 4 San Francisco mayors and 2 California governors, including the San Francisco Public Library Commission. After being appointed by Mayor George Moscone, Dr. Ray served on the Library Commission from 1976 to 1988. Known for her brilliant intelligence, her profound and eclectic knowledge, her critical thinking, her humor and wit, her untiring activism, her compassion and love for Black people, Dr. Ray impacted the lives of all who were fortunate enough to share in her life. Commissioners, I also want to acknowledge the life of former library staff member Sarita Charitar. I recently learned that Sarita passed away on April 15th, 2022. She was a dedicated staff member who enjoyed a long, fruitful career at the library from 1984 to 2015. Sarita is survived by her husband, daughter, son, and 4 brothers and 3 sisters. So thank you so much for your consideration of taking action this evening to adjourn the meeting in memory of Dr. Ray Richardson and Sarita Charitar.
Thank you very much for the presentation on 2 really extraordinary people who have really made an impact here at the library. We will now open this up for public comment. Members of the public who wish to make public comment on WebEx, please click the raise hand button on the lower right-hand portion of your screen. And if you've called into WebEx dial-in number, please press *3 to line up to speak. We will begin with public comment here in Corrette and then move to those on WebEx. Public comment is now open here in Corrette.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director, Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com. P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0554. Of course, we support adjourning in honor of Dr. Ray Richardson and Sarita Charitar. I'm glad we finally got some information about Dr. Ray Richardson. It's been 2 meetings since the anonymous citizen first brought that up and gave a lot more detail, in fact, than what's in here. This only, unfortunately, what was included in the packet has something like 5 words, including the San Francisco Public Library Commission is the only reference to her here. And I'm glad to hear that our city librarian mentioned some other details, but certainly it's good to hear the specifics. And she had a terrific impact, which I've talked about and the anonymous citizen talked about even more. It would have been good to hear more about Sarita Charitar. In the packet, there wasn't even a mention of the fact that she had any connection to the library. And I think that if you're going to take the trouble to provide in memoriam, then give us a little bit of details. That would be appreciated. I've said previously that you shouldn't adjourn without insisting on having an item about things you want in future meetings, as you have done before. And the chair thanked myself and another member of the public regarding our comments. The other member of the public mentioned Ocean View Library. I'd love to hear more about that and other library capital projects that are mentioned in the racial report as well. And I have to say, unfortunately, that having looked at the Ocean View site, I consider it a real death trap for people coming across multiple highways that are crisscrossing, very fast moving, lots of trucks, no lights, and a very isolated spot that doesn't have very much else going on in the way of a local community, such as shops and other institutions. The safety issues, I think, are really serious and need to be looked at seriously. I don't recall there being much discussion at that time. So I think there needs to be some serious consideration of that site. Certainly it's fine to build a bigger library. The existing one is very small. That could be on a future agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment here in Correct? Seeing there's no additional public comment here, we will turn to public comment through WebEx. Operations, if there are any commenters in the remote queue, please begin to put the commenters through.
Madam President, there are no remote commenters at this time.
Thank you. Hearing no further requests for comment, public comment is now closed, and we now move to the commission discussion on item number 6 for adjournment. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move.
Commissioner Mall makes the motion. A second from any commissioner?
I second it.
Commissioner Wardell-Garaducci. So we have a motion from Commissioner Mall and a second from Commissioner Wardell-Garaducci to adjourn the meeting in honor of Dr. Ray Richardson and Sarita Charitar.
And I'll take the roll now. Commissioners, please say aye or no when I call your name. President Wolf.
Aye.
Vice President Wong.
Aye.
Commissioner Ono.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously, and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much for your participation.